Hi everyone, welcome to this Affinity Designer 1.9 feature overview. There are a load of new features and tools and just general workflow enhancements to the 1.9 update. So let's get straight into it and go through some of those now. A really powerful new feature in 1.9 is the Select Same feature. As the name suggests, this allows you to select particular elements of your design based on their characteristics. So let's look at how that works. And to start off with, I'm going to select a little area of this illustration here. And then I'm going to go to Select and select Same and choose Fill Color. That has just grabbed all of the matching curves from my Layers panel here and just then allows me to do various things with them. So I could group these together. I could, in this case, let's right click, scroll down, and let's give these a tag color. So let's give them a gray tag color there. Or I could change the color of them in the color panel, for example. So instantly, that's one way you could use that. If I then go to a different area, and let's choose this white whisker sort of area, and then go to select and select same. And now let's choose stroke color. So here we've just picked up all of the matching white areas of the design that have a white stroke color to them. And you can see that in my color panel as well. It's just areas which have this white fill. So really quick and easy way to grab those. And while we're there, we could use the color panel just to adjust that and maybe just take away some of the white like luminosity to that and just drop it back a little bit there, like so. So now let's just grab something in the middle here, this shape here, which also has both fill and a stroke color to it. And let's go to select, select same and choose fill and stroke color. And now that's grabbed all of those areas. We can once again right click on the layers and give those a tag color as well. So some great little ways to speed up your workflow, and in this case add some organization to your layers as well in your layers panel. In the next example, I'm going to use this architectural sort of illustration. And I'm going to click one of these curves at the top. And now if I go to select and choose select same, and this time choose stroke weight, that has just grabbed all of those matching strokes in my design, saving me having to click and drag over the whole design and just saving a bit of time there really. And now if I go over to my stroke panel, I can adjust the width here, maybe just bring that down a little bit. But actually what I'm going to do is give the strokes a different pressure profile by clicking on this box and just bringing the endpoints of my profile down just to give those a bit of a more of a dynamic look. And you can see that's actually given quite a nice effect on the edges of the illustration especially. So that's one nice way you could use that. And now if we click on one of these rectangles, I can show you another way you can use this by going to select same and choosing shape. There's only two rectangles in this design, but I know that's one really quick and easy way to grab those, especially in the future if I was using a design which had a lot of different types of shapes in there. That would be a really quick way to do that. But while they're selected, let's go over to our stroke panel again, and let's just give these a sharper join on the edges and maybe just decrease the stroke width again just to match our design a bit more, like so. Maybe something like that. Yeah, great. And while we're there, actually, with say one of these pieces of text selected, we can go to select same, and we can also utilize transparency or blend mode. So this would be a good way to maybe select something which you maybe had a few different areas of your design which had different transparency modes added to them, and you just wanted to make sure they all had a matching transparency and just keep your design really unified. So it's a good way to maybe use that select same just for sort of due diligence as well in your design. So another option you have there. And then in this last example, I'm going to use this typography illustration, and we're going to use some of our layer organizational options as well. So as you can see, I've got loads of layers here, or curves within my layer, should I say. So let's just select one of these here. And if I right click and scroll down, I can this time use select same via my layers panel. So if I select same tag color, that's just grabbed all of those matching tag color elements. Let's use Command G and group those together, and that is now starting to just tidy up my layers. So let's do that again, scroll down, select same tag color on one of the blue elements, and then group, Command G or Control G on a PC. And for the last one, I'm just going to show you the more traditional way to do it at the top of your screen with select same, and tag color. I'm over there, you can see we also have name as another option we could use as well. Just a great way to say grab anything that has the matching description shown in your layers panel, for example. So another option you have there just to really select kind of everything together with the same description. But let's choose tag color for this, Command G, and that has just instantly tidied up our layers in a really efficient way. So really is a great way to use some of those select same features and just improve your workflow and really, yeah, save yourself some time as you're designing. So some great features there. So Designer 1.9 now comes with a select object feature, which is really handy as well. So let's go to select, scroll down to select object and take a look at that list. So to get started, let's just choose art text. So that's just grabbed in this design the only area of art text that I have. And one quick little keyboard shortcut little trick you can do is hold Alt or Option and use the left and right arrow keys just to tighten or loosen that text. So in this case, I actually want to maybe make it fill the page a bit more. So let's just go somewhere like that and just space that out a little bit more. So that's a really quick way you can do that. With this design, there's tons of layers. So that's actually a kind of an easier way to just locate that text without having to scroll through all of my layers and try and find it that way, or have another shape sort of interfere with it when I'm trying to select it a more traditional way. So that's just one example of how you could use that. And if we go back to select and go to select object, we've also got frame text and path text there as well, just to highlight those. So if I go to some other options here, we've got curves, open curves, and close curves. Again, for like a design example, that's quite handy if you want to, say you've got hundreds of curves and lines, and you just want to locate the ones that actually aren't closed shapes. So that's quite handy to really try and sort of troubleshooting with the design. So I'm a big fan of that. But let's just skip those and go straight to shapes in this case. So you can see with the little outline preview we've got here, that has just highlighted anything which has been made with one of the shape tools. So really handy there just to locate those. And in this case, let's utilize the color tag option again and just give those like a purple tag. Just for future reference, that might be quite a handy way for me to locate those without having to go to select object. So yeah, big fan of that. Just another way to organize your layers. And let's go back to select and select object. And again, let's use artboards in this case. So this has just got one artboard in this design, but I just want to label this artboard. And the way to do that is to do it on the layers panel. So that's one way, again, to save me scrolling up on my layers panel. One way just to quickly locate that. So let's double click that and let's give it a more fitting name. Endless Summer in this case. Click enter, and that just renames that, as you can see here. So just a quick way to do that without having to, as I say, scroll through your layers and do it the more traditional previous way. And then going back to select object, we now have in this section a huge range of object descriptions. So yeah, filled objects, stroked, unstroked, dashed. Particularly handy again if you want to locate all your dashed curves and lines for, say, like an architectural design or something like that. Really handy with that one. Transparent and opaque as well, especially if you've maybe created a few shapes which originally had a transparent or like an opacity to them, and maybe you want to actually make everything 100% opacity. A really quick way just to locate those. But now let's look at images and pixel objects. So images, if I select that, that's going to show you all, in this case, all of my stock images, which haven't been rasterized. They've just been dragged in and maybe duplicated and modified. But that's just separating those from my pixel based images in there. So let's do the old color tag trick again, right click, and let's give those a red color tag. And now if we go back to select and select object and select pixel objects, this is then going to grab all of those ones which I've rasterized or I've edited and then sort of baked in those appearances. So just to organize my layers again, let's give those like a yellow tag there, just to add a bit more organization. But I like that you've got the option of choosing between the two. It's not just pixel and that's it. It's yeah, either or, especially when you're using a lot of stock imagery and you like to duplicate and save those original images. I do like you can select between the two. So let's go back to that, and underneath there we have some other options. So we've got groups, vector layers, and embedded documents and symbols. And to look at those, I'm just going to show you this other example I have ready over here. So this is kind of like an architectural design kind of thing. And if I just show you, again, my layers are kind of quite built up. There's a lot of curves there, so there's a lot of things to have to scroll through if I want to adjust anything there. But just to show you how that works in this scenario, let's go to select object, and let's grab groups in this case. So I can see here I've got some additional elements applied to those. So these have a bitmap sort of pattern fill to those, and this group here has a color underneath it. So one thing I might do is if I go to select object and go to groups, I might either, as I've shown before, add a color tag there, or I might add an additional layer effect to those two groups, which I could do by going to the layer effects button here, for example, and I could just give them a color overlay just to change the characteristics there. So the default there is just like a nice black overlay there, but I might actually want to choose something like this blue in the background, just to give it to get rid of my previous halftone pattern. And I can also then give that, if I wanted to see that coming through again, change my blend mode from normal just to fill over that and give it like a linear burn, or let's give it a multiply in this case, just so we can see the blue that we've chosen to come through there. So that's one way you could use that. Also, if I go to select object and choose vector layers, that is then going to go to the top. And in this case, I've just got my one vector layer with all of my curves inside there. So I'm actually just going to use this little shortcut just to rename that by double clicking, and let's call that vector layer, like so. And we've also got, just to show you again, select object, embedded documents and symbols there. So just a few other options. Embedded documents as well, really handy if you're working with something with loads of different embedded elements in there and you just want to quickly grab those. And symbols, of course, again, very handy to locate those instantly. But yeah, huge fan, and there's just a huge list of options there. So no doubt loads of ways that can speed up your workflow and just save you a load of time as you're working through your design. So yeah, great addition there. The new Studio Presets feature allows you to save your favorite panels and layout of panels and recall those depending on the type of design you're working on at the time. So it's a really handy feature. So let's first of all go over to View and scroll down to Studio, and let's add some more panels to this particular layout. So let's add character, and let's also add a paragraph panel as well. So there's two new panels, and I'm actually going to just drag those to the right hand side in this example, and I'm now going to call this my new default. So if I go to View and scroll down to Studio Presets this time, I can then add a preset, and let's call that new default. Now I'm going to go back to View, and this time I'm going to go to Studio, and I'm going to reset Studio. This will go back to the original designer default, There we go. And now if I go to view, scroll down to presets and just click on that new default we've made, that will then call that back up. So just gives me the option to bring my personal favorite default there before I start a design, and just saves a bit of time because that will always be there whenever I load up Designer. Now let's look at a way to create a bit more of a creative layout. So let's move this character panel over here, and I'm just going to get the basics that I'm going to use for a sort of standard sort of design I might do. So let's put some color on the left, stroke panel, brushes as well. Just as you can see, as well as I move that around, that just snaps underneath the panel. So it's really handy, like a sort of magnet feature there, just to make it easier for us to move those around. And I'm going to need layers, of course, so let's put that underneath. And let's put transform on the left hand side as well. So there's some traditional basic panels I would use in a design. And now let's get rid of the others. So you can move them around like so, and you can just press this little cross button here just to close them. So let's move the others that we're not going to use. Close that there. This will drag that group across as well, and I can just close that. Do the same with the remaining panels, like so, and just close all those off. Now let's move that to the right hand side and just tidy up the screen a bit more. And now let's go back to view, scroll down to Studio Presets and add preset. Let's call this Design 1, for example. Great. So now what we could do is go back to view and go down to Studio Presets, and let's click Manage Studio Presets. And here you can see our two new Studio Presets there, which we could either rename, delete, and just say you've got quite a few there and some of them are very similar to each other. It's just a great way to organize those and just make sure it's nice and tidy in there. So in fact, while we're here, let's change this Design 1 to Design Custom Layout. There we go. Just a bit more of a specific description there. And we can close that. And just to show you the process again, if we go to View and go to Studio, let's reset the Studio layout like so, and then go back to View, Studio Presets, and there's our new name as well, Design Custom Layout. And it remembers where they were placed as well, so that's a really key thing. As you can see, I've moved them around to try and fill the spaces a bit more, and that has called that up in exactly the way I wanted it to. So it's a really great handy feature there, and just makes your life a lot easier whenever you're working within Affinity Designer. So one of my favorite new features in 1.9 in Designer is the ability to create your own custom brush from a pixel selection directly within Designer itself. So with this example, I'm actually going to show you how you can create this kind of confetti-esque sort of brush, just using some simple shapes, but then turning that into your own custom confetti brush, and then turning that into a really simple kind of fun birthday card design like this. But let's go straight to it and start off with the shapes themselves. So I created these shapes just using the simple shape tools we have on the left hand side in Designer, and you can get to some of these extra ones like the heart and the tear just by holding down on the triangle and then going down to those specific shapes, and there's quite a few there as well to choose from. That's where you can also grab the star tool as well. So yeah, I use those just to create these shapes, and then added a gradient color to them as well, just to add a bit more variation to them. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate these shapes. One way to do that is just by going right click on the layer in the layer panel itself, and then scrolling down to duplicate. And you can also do that with the Command J or Control J on a PC shortcut as well. So let's turn the previous layer off, and then I'm going to right click and then go down to rasterize. So that's just going to turn those vector shapes into pixel shapes, into a pixel layer. And now what we can do is create a brush. So let's go over to the top corner and go to the pixel persona, just like so. So now we can go to our brush panel and actually use the little corner option here and click that. And once we have that selected already in our layers panel, we can then go new brush from selection. So once that's been clicked, we can then double click the new brush we've made and start to edit it. So here we've got various options available to us. So let's start off by adjusting the size. So let's bring this down a little bit here. So let's go something a little bit more in the middle, and everything else I'm fairly happy with, but I'm also going to change the spacing as well. That's a key thing here. So we want it to be kind of like a stamp, really. We want to just replicate these shapes rapidly over the image that we're designing. So the spacing needs to be definitely a bit further apart. If it's too close together, it's just not really going to make any sense. So definitely a bit of space there just to divide those up a little bit. We could add a bit of rotation, but that would just add a unified rotation to each time it's repeated. So we want to keep that actually on 0% for this. The next thing to do is go over to dynamics. Let's click on that. So now we have loads of other options available to us. We could change the size as it's repeated, the flow and so on. But for this, actually, I just want to change the rotation of the dynamics. So if I turn that to 100%, as you can see in the little preview window we've got here, it will gradually rotate the group of shapes every time it is repeating them. So that's an ideal thing here, just to add. We want it just to look kind of like a random collection of shapes, again, just to match that confetti sort of design we're after originally. Along with that, let's now go down to hue and let's turn that up to 100% as well. So what that's doing is just changing those repeated groups of shapes, just the colors there, just to add even more variation. So now we've got what looks like a load more shapes than we originally had. So really, really useful. On top of that, we've got saturation and luminosity and so on, but let's just keep those two changed for now. If we then go to texture, we could add some texture here, as you'd expect from the name. But for this, we're just going to keep it sort of flat. But then the other thing to mention is sub brushes. Now, for this, I just want the simple shapes. But when you're creating your own brushes, especially for sort of artistic purposes like creating a pencil or an ink brush, these two are really, really handy just to create your own really custom brush. And you can add like a bitmap here. So that's definitely worth experimenting with. But for this one, we just want to keep the simple settings we've changed. So I'm just going to close that now. We're happy with that. Go over to my brush tool and make sure that's selected. And then let's add a new pixel layer as well. And let's turn the previous layer off. And now if I adjust the size using the shortcut and just zoom out a little bit, we can then start to fill our page. So that's a bit too small. Let's bring that up a bit more. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. So now let's start to fill the page like so. Still quite small, but that's fine. I'm just going to really just chuck these on the page because they're going to be in the background really, and it's going to be more of a texture that we're after. But as you can see, it is starting to create this fun, really colourful, vibrant confetti pattern on our pixel layer. So, and if I just slow it down and show you, it just shows how those shapes are just sort of randomly being displayed in the square. So it's a really clever sort of addition to being able to make your own brushes. But the key thing with it is that you can now do it within your document itself. So I haven't had to load anything in. I've just done it directly from the shapes I made previously, sort of in the same document. And that's a real big time saver, especially if you're sort of doing something just on the fly. You just want to try, actually, I've got these shapes, let's try and make them into a sort of fun, larger pattern. So yeah, it really is a big time saver. So there's our kind of ad hoc confetti sort of layer. Now let's quickly just add some text to this. So I'm going to go back to my designer persona in the top left. Just click on that there. And let's click on the artistic text tool. And let's just click and drag just to get the lettering in there at the appropriate size. Let's call that Happy Birthday. I'm going to do the full text actually to match the previous one. And I'm going to put my snapping tool on. Sorry, I almost forgot the name there. And that's just going to help me to just get it right in the middle there. So yeah, nicely in the middle, perfect. And let's turn this into a white fill instead of having the outline to it. So let's go like so. So I've just switched that around, and as you may have noticed there, just to highlight that, the little double arrow indicates switching between your stroke fill and your main fill, just to mention that. So now and before I do that, I'm just going to duplicate that layer just for future use, which I'll show you in a second, and turn that off. So let's drag the pixel layer into that text now, just on the layers panel like so. If I drag it underneath where the actual text is, that you can read the happy birthday text there, you'll see that the positioning changes. So if I just drag it underneath there, that's just then snapped or clipped, shall I say, inside that text. So it's hidden everything else and just put the pattern inside where the text was. So now let's use the duplicated layer, turn that on, and give that just a black outline, just like so. And I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcuts of Command and Command and open bracket to rearrange that. So that's just moved that around on my layers, and make sure that's got the fill that we need. Yep. So now I'm going to duplicate this background layer again. So that's now selected. I'm going to click and drag using Option, and I'm actually going to give this a black fill just before I do that, just so it's definitely got the appropriate fill that I need. So I'm going to use Option or Alt and click and drag like so, just to give this a 3D sort of effect. And now I'm going to use Power Duplicate, which is an awesome extra little tool there, just to duplicate that in the direction that I want it to go in. And now, just as a final thing, with my top text layer where the pixel layer is, I'm actually going, while that's still clipped inside the birthday text, I'm actually going to just resize that a little bit. Just by holding Command, I can then do that from the center point as well. And there we go. So it's just a quick way just to create in this case, this is just a sort of celebration, birthday text, but that could be anything. Just wanted to show you like a relevant example there. But there I've gone from my original shapes, I've then created my own custom brush, and I've used them in this sort of fun text design, all within the same document. So I've not had to load anything else in. It's all been self-contained. So just a really great way to use that custom brush from Selection, new edition we've got here. So yeah, really great feature in 1.9 for sure. Placing images inside a document actually now has some new options attached to it as well. So let's go to the Place Image tool to get started with that, just on the left hand side. And then firstly, I'm going to use this yellow background example. And if I click and drag, you'll see that I can actually choose the size I want this image to be placed inside the document. So that's one great way to use that first of all. But if we go over to the left hand side, you can see in the context toolbar that I actually have additional settings here. So if I click on this percentage here, or this row, and then click on original size, that will change the scale that I've dragged it into to 100%. So with this being a JPEG and a raster image basically set at a certain size, you can always go back to the 100% DPI and make sure you're not dragging it into a larger scale than it should be. So really handy if you're using JPEGs or anything that's basically pixel information. But for this, I'm just going to drag it down a little bit just to fit which I can do obviously just using my move tool as normal. And now I'm actually going to convert this color image into black and white using the K only button we've added as well. So this, as you can see, just turns that straight into black and white. Very handy if you're needing to print documents that are full color images, and if you need to save on ink or anything like that, obviously very useful just to turn something into black and white. So actually in this instance, I'm going to use it as part of the design, and I'm going to go onto my blend mode and change this from normal to multiply, and you can see then it actually blends in with the background straight away. And let's go back and change this to 100% scale or original size, and just to make the most of the image. And let's use the command and open bracket shortcut just to move it down our layer here, so it's now behind our text. And yeah, that's one way you can do that. I'm going to use an image with vector information for this second example though, so I'm going to go to File and Place as another way we can do that. So now let's choose this AF design file instead. Let's drag it into place again, and this time, because we're using vector information, it doesn't matter in the same way that it needs to be in the right scale, because as you zoom into it, it's going to be nice and crisp at any size. So because it is vector information, that is fully scalable, but it's good to know anyway to see if you want it to be the same as the document it was originally made in. So we could go back and go original size if we want to do that. But for this example, I actually want to change how it's viewed. So we can do that by adjusting the page box. So we can do, with this little box, drop down box here, we can change from minimum content, maximum, visible, and so on. So if I go to maximum visible content, that's going to be the same as the trim box in this case. But let's go to minimum, and that's just going to jump straight to where all that vector data is. So a really handy way just to get straight to the point, really, straight to the area of design you want to adjust. And now I'm actually going to change the color of this text, this design, sorry. And I'm going to do that by going to my effects, layer effects options at the bottom here. If I click on that, then add a color overlay, and I'm going to add a white overlay in this case. That has then just added the overlay to that vector data. So it's a really quick and easy way without having to open that file separately, copy the data in. I'm just using it as an embedded image essentially. So really handy way and really quick way to adjust something like those vector lines. And now let's just enlarge that a little bit more and just maybe turn that just to fit in that space a bit better with where our text is. And also now you can see that this little information here is actually in the way. So what I'm going to do is use the vector crop tool just to click on that, and let's just drag that in just to hide that really. I'll do the same at the top as well, and same at the bottom there. And it's just tidied up the image while still retaining, I haven't had to rasterize anything, it's still retaining its vector data and keeping it nice and crisp in our document. So yeah, just a few things there you can use with some of our new place image tools and features. Easily one of the biggest new additions to 1.9 is the brand new contour tool. Now this is a really powerful new tool with various different applications as well, and I'm just going to talk you through some of the different scenarios I've put together just to hopefully inspire you to come up with your own use cases as well. But for this first example, I've got these 3 circles and I've just given them a multiply blend mode as well, just to make them a bit more interesting when they're combined together. And they are all grouped together, and then by going over to the new contour tool on the left hand side, I can increase the size or decrease the size of all 3 simultaneously. So it's a really handy little tool to, in this case, just transform the shapes straight away. And all I'm doing is increasing or decreasing them, but it is happening straight away and saving me time doing that individually. But if I just go to do one on its own and double clicking there, I'll show you actually what's happening. And if I just press O as a shortcut to get to that contour tool as well, we can then see what's happening there. So the thin blue line that's there shows the original size, and the fill color that you can see is obviously showing where it's going to end up. Now, as I'm dragging that, you might notice that at the top in the context toolbar, the radius amount is also changing. So if you go up there, we can actually adjust this slider ourselves, or we can put in a specific amount like so. Let's put 10 in there. Great. But now, while we're on that same context toolbar, we can look at some other options. So we have forced open and forced closed, but the default is auto closed. So for most scenarios, I think that's going to be the most useful option to have. But if I actually select all three of the circles and just put that back to its default, then grab the contour tool again and just select force open, you'll see that the type of image we get is actually very different. So it's a really fun way to just experiment with creating, in this case, kind of quite retro or psychedelic little patterns and things, all by just changing to a different fill type. So it really is worth experimenting to see what you can come up with. But let's just go back and undo that. I'm just going to show you what you can also do. In fact, I'm just going to copy this and make a separate circle just to show you here. If I go to increase this and then go to bake appearance, that then converts that to the new radius amount that we've put in. So that's now locked that in to a new size. So really handy if you want to just lock in the appearance of some of the shapes that you've changed. So there's some initial things you can do. But now let's look at applying this to text as well. So here's some lettering I have. And firstly, I'm going to just duplicate this by going to Command J or Control J on a PC. Now on the layer beneath, actually firstly I'm going to change the colour of that. So let's use this blue, there we go. On the layer beneath, I'm going to select it and I'm going to go to the contour tool again. And I'm going to drag, and straight away, that's just giving us a very traditional outline to that text. So yeah, it's just a really nice, quick and easy way to add some more sort of dynamic lettering to your design. But here, what we need to do is just go to the contour type and adjust this to our preference. So if we change the join to something more angular, this is then going to match the lettering we have. But you might prefer this to be more of a like retro curved edge. So there's just some things to bear in mind. Changing the contour type can drastically change how the design is going to look as well. So just a quick text example there. The next thing I want to show you is applying it to curves and more of like a logo type design. So in this case, I just have these shapes and they are quite thin shapes at the moment. But if I just select these by going to the groups, I'm just holding Command or Control on a PC just to select all of them together. If I go to my contour tool again and click and drag, I'm actually going to be able to increase the width of these lines straight away, and actually in a different way to how they would look by using the stroke panel. So I think this is a really good way to consider doing it in the future. So instantly I've just made all of these lines much more sort of bolder and impactful in just one click of the contour tool. So it's a really nice, quick and easy way to do that. And again, if you want to lock in on that appearance, you can just click Bake Appearance. So that's another option you could choose. The last thing I want to show you is utilizing the contour tool with compound shapes. Now this is quite a funky example and it's almost like a lava-like design. But if you just click on one of these circles, you can see they're actually merging with the different shapes in a really quite a unique way, and it's almost like they are merging in a very non-traditional shape manner. It's really cool, and it's something that you could no doubt use this kind of technique in various other design formats, but it was just worth showing you this function, which is kind of a bit of a hack really to use it, but there's some really cool things I'm sure you could do with this. And in this case, obviously, as I say, it's kind of like a lava lava lamp kind of effect, but I'll just show you how you can do that. So I'm just going to move to a new space over here. We'll be able to look at that properly. So I'm going to grab the ellipse tool in this case, click and drag with shift enabled, and then I'm going to duplicate that shape and just overlap a few of them together just to create some sort of random shapes. And then I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to create a compound shape. So we can do that by holding Option or Alt and going to the top of the designer window and clicking on Add, which is one of our Boolean options. And that's just created a compound shape. So now what we can do is grab the contour tool again and click and drag. Now if we drag outwards to increase the size, that's increasing the radius as you'd expect. But if we actually go in, this is how we can create these quite interesting blob sort of effects. And this is, as I say, a really basic example of that, but it's worth just experimenting with this contour tool and compound shape effect, because I'm sure there are many other ways you could use this, but you know, creating like bike cogs or various other things, you know, I'm sure there's many ways this can be used, but it is just sort of goes to show some of the cool things you can do with this tool, which is really, really versatile. So yeah, really big fan, and definitely lots you can do with that, and worth checking out. The ability to apply text to a curve in your design has also had some upgrades made to it as well. So what we're going to do in this example is recreate this curved food design and utilize some of these new additions. So let's turn this layer off first, and we're going to use this ellipse shape which I've made previously, just using the ellipse tool. So I'm going to duplicate that first just as a backup, and then turn the original one off. And now I'm going to go over to my artistic text tool. And now as you approach the ellipse, you'll see that the symbol is changing to signify that we can now click on this shape and the text will be applied there. So I'm going to actually just click on the upper side of the ellipse as opposed to the inside of it, and click and drag just to signify what sort of size I want my text to be. So now let's put in some text like so, and let's select all and change this to center align the text at the top in the context toolbar as well for our lettering. Now what we can do is adjust the start and end points, and if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll actually see that we are prompted to, it will tell us there that this is going to adjust the start point and this one is going to adjust the end point. So let's do that now, and because we have snapping on, it's just going to jump to the middle of that ellipse perfectly there as well, just like so. So now I'm going to go back to the end point of the text. I'm going to hit enter. That has then given me a second line of text. So let's put that in now. There we go. And we're then given 2 additional arrows. So if we move this one down here, that'll move the start point. And this one here, that'll do the same. Now if I just adjust this to cover the text, you'll just spot a little eye symbol pops up here. This will just show us any text which is in the sort of no show zone, basically. So this essentially allows us to show overflowing text or not. So if I just click that again, that'll just bring that back in. So that's worth bearing in mind, and just keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for that, and you'll see that, yeah, it's just going to help you with your design basically. So now I will do one other thing to adjust this text. So the top line, I quite like where it's placed. It's kind of just on the outside of the circle, and the bottom line of text, I actually want to be more consistent with that. So I'm going to select all this text, and then I'm going to adjust the baseline of the text as well. So if I click on the little arrow, and I can then increase this slider. So this is just going to put this text where the top of the M meets the circle, just like with the A's and the N here. I want that same thing to be applied on both lines of text. So that's just one little quick tweak you can do there as well. And there we go. So that's a really quick way you can use some of the new text on a path features and really create some interesting typography layouts as well. The new resource manager in Affinity Designer is a really handy addition, and it enables you to go from having embedded elements in your design to having the option to make those linked instead. So particularly handy if you need to organize your files, or if you need to send your final design to somebody else and just have all of those elements nicely organized together. So let's have a look at that now by going to View and going down to Resource Manager. So here you can see currently all of my images are set to embedded. So what we could do first of all is click on one of these and click on Locate in Document, and it will show me that in my Layers panel and in my image. So it's a really quick way to locate something, especially if you've got loads of different layers in your design and you need to locate a really particular element if you need to change it, or just locate where that is in your design. The next option we have is Update. Now, if this was a linked image, which we'll go to in a minute, this would then allow you to update that image which has, say, been changed externally. So say we're using a linked image and it's been changed in Affinity Photo, for example, you could then click Update and it would update that in your design straight away. So a really efficient way to make the most of linked images there. We can also replace, as you can imagine, that will replace that with your chosen image, or we can click Make Linked. Now what I'm actually going to do is select all of these and I'm going to click Collect. So by doing this, it's going to bring up the option to choose where to put my file. So let me put that in my folder here and click New Folder, and let's go Collected Images and click Create and Collect, and that has now put all those images in the folder I have here called Collected Images. So just a nice, really quick way to bring all those together. So let me close that and just get back to our resource manager. And the other thing we can do is also, let's click one of these and click on Show in Finder, and that will pop up with the Finder window, and in this case our Collected Images folder is just going to show us that straight away. So let's just close that for now and go back to our resource manager. So that's how you can change those things there and go from having embedded images and turn them into linked ones instead. So one other thing to show you with this in mind is how you can change the default designer setting. So if I actually go to File, or actually Designer, and then scroll down to Preferences, here we can go to General, and at the bottom here it says automatically update linked resources when modified externally. So if you click that option, the example I mentioned earlier where we were using something which might have been changed in, as I say, Affinity Photo, for example, then that would automatically pop up on the screen with the new design. So say one of these elements had been tweaked, maybe the color's been changed or something, that would automatically update the linked resource and therefore update on screen. So that's really handy if you just want to always have those there updating. But sometimes it's quite good to do those yourself manually with the resource manager. So that's a personal preference, something to bear in mind how you want to go about doing that yourself. The last thing to show you is how to package this file together. So similar to how we've done it before with the resource manager, let's this time go to File, scroll down, and let's choose Save as Package. So clicking on that, it's then going to show us some other information here. So it gives us a summary of the images we have. In this case, our images are a total of 7 images. They're all linked. None of them are missing and none have been modified. So that's great to see that they're just as, again, a bit of a sort of due diligence just to make sure everything's as it should be. Our fonts are displayed here as well. In this case, it's purely just an image-based design. And our images are also listed and all have a nice big green tick next to them as well, just so we know they're all present and nothing's missing. So we can go OK, and then we can choose a folder to put those in. I'm just going to put them in this same folder for now, just for the purpose of this. Let's just call this new folder. Oops. And click package. And then let's go back to that in our Finder window and double click here. And that has put everything together. So what you would do is this new folder we've got here, we would, in our case, right click. We could compress that, and then that would make that nice and easy to actually send to somebody else to work on, which in this case, along with the images, also includes the folder itself, so the design folder, or design file, should I say. So just a really great way for you to be able to just be able to send your file to somebody else and have all of those images separated from your design without having to have them embedded, which you would have to do in the past. So some really great things there with the resource manager, and also something to bear in mind using the package option we have now as well. So that wraps up the 1.9 overview. Hopefully you enjoyed those examples, and if you wanted to see some more in-depth tutorials, we've got a huge selection on our website in the link below. But thanks for checking out the video, and I'll see you in the next one.